projects and
Yeah.
bonded for our portion on the wellness center.
Right.
That 2/3 of that's coming from somewhere else.
Just so there's no confusion as to what those numbers mean.
So I, just procedurally at that hearing, because if I recall, we have not participated in that in the past, is that?
Well, they've only had it once before.
Right, it was just last year, right, and we didn't.
We were there, but we
We
weren't
weren't
up to
required,
present.
we were not required, did we present
No.
then?
Yep,
We do
tomorrow
this
we
year.
will.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yep. So I have specific statutory requirements about, they're in our, also in our budget notice, but there's like 6 things that they'll wanna see us present on. What's your total budget? What was your prior one? What's the percentage difference? What was your levy? What would the levy be if you were to keep it? So say our total tax asking this year was, I'd have to look at my budget here. That's sales tax. So we're asking for 671, or 109,000, sorry, geez, 1.9 million in property tax. Last year it was 1.74, so about 160,000 more. If we went back down to that, what would your levy have to be to go back down to the level you got the year before? These are the kind of things that the statute wants you to present on. So we'll probably hit the highlights too real quick in regards to insurance increases, some of the things are in the memo. But predominantly then explain the wellness center and the wastewater plant, because those are huge.
Yeah, the numbers alone don't tell the whole story, and so we wanna make sure there's no confusion. We're not hiding the ball or anything. We just wanna make sure that everyone understands the context of those numbers, in particular, those projects. If you weren't aware of those projects, you'd be like, wow, like, what's going on? But the projects explain a lot of what's going on.
And you'll walk through everybody through that.
Yeah, it's not gonna go to painstaking, it's not gonna be me for 2 hours like I am here, because again, we'll have had 3 or 4 meetings at the city council to discuss the budget, but
Totally.
we'll hit the statutory elements and then the highlights as well. And
And the public has an opportunity at the end to comment.
then they can comment.
And then
So I
that's-
don't believe it's a Q&A, it's have your question, state your piece, and you'll be given amount of time for each citizen to speak. And then we'll come back and, have our meeting next Tuesday.
So regarding the, capital projects, I personally spent a lot of time looking at the list, does anybody else have any thoughts or?
Well, I have one question on that. Did you mention the rescue squad had partial grant on that
Yeah,
item?
can I understand that better?
Or clarify on
And
what
the
that,
other portion of it, so let me get my memo.
as in if we would take it out,
There was
do
a
we?
Nebraska, there was an all Nebraska grant to help out all the smaller towns that don't have the funding, and we qualified.
And so
But his
we-
question is, what happens to
But
that
if
grant?
we don't have this item in the
Then we ain't gonna
budget,
get
do
it.
we lose
We
that
lose it.
grant money?
Yes.
Yes,
And my recommendation on that, again, I put an alternative in there, is to utilize some of the funds that are in the sinking fund.
And are the funds there?
Yes.
Okay. So,
It's
you're
a
not,
question of which pot do you wanna take
right,
it from?
I personally,
I'm also, let's be honest, and I can't speak to the time flow of this because this isn't ordered. We've been waiting 3 years for
truck.
our truck.
right,
So I don't even know if this vehicle will hit
This year,
this year anyways.
I'm guessing probably, I assume
I
it's
don't know what the lead-
customizable, right?
I'd say 2 years, I bet.
I don't know what the lead times are, but you may come back and go, no, we're fine. While that fund builds up for another year, we don't need to use that in the next fiscal year, we're fine. But I want to note, if you give me a directive and say, that's what you'll use the sinking fund for, and I'll make the adjustment. And then there's a revenue source for it that shows it transferring out of the sinking fund back in.
But then if we don't, it's gonna go further out. And then we.
And you lose the grant.
Yeah.
and the
we lose-
yeah,
grant's
I mean, if the money is
75,000.
in the sinking fund,
And there's no issue with
The-
using the sinking fund, right, John?
No.
Okay.
The only thing that we have in the back burner that's gonna face us one of these days is a $1 million ladder truck.
right,
That's
understand.
what we might wanna think about the sinking fund, is it the right thing to do? Because we.
The question is if we need the ambulance, and let's be honest,
Use
they-
not more.
they use those rescue squads
How, like,
Constant.
yeah.
constantly. That is the number one piece of apparatus we have. And then also, I think, with doing this, we would also I don't know if this one has it, but this one may need to get retro with it. Is 99 also the one that needs the striker system
Yeah,
still?
yes.
I heard from a number of, we put the striker cot system in the other one in last year's budget, or this current year's, how that works out. That is a workers' comp saver for us.
Like me, I can lift it myself.
Yeah, it is incredible, and so upgrading these rescue squads, when you see how many times they roll, and they go by my window every time almost, it is, putting money into the rescue squads is definitely a decent investment for how much we utilize them.
I appreciate Carl asking about that specifically, cause I did have questions about that one too. And then the only other one I had questions about, if I recall, and I might not be right here, the senior center flooring was supposed to be replaced last year?
This, technically you would go with this year,
Okay.
as in right now, physically right
Okay,
now,
was
this fiscal year.
there a reason? Like, is it unsafe or,
It's getting to its useful life. I think the other issue is that she put it at 30, and it's a little more than 30 now with estimates, and so she's probably also gonna have to bid this out now. That's another issue that popped up that Katrina was working on.
so is this in lieu of what was supposed to happen?
Your cash would transfer, but when you look at your spending for next year, because this is gonna have to push, it is not gonna happen within the next 11 days.
Right, understand. I'm just trying to,
Yep.
if it was a safety concern specifically, that was, because it was there last year, or this year. I just wanted to understand that.
So, I think I'd have to speak more to Katrina about it. I don't know that all the floors, but it's something that
Because
she would like to have done.
I understand,
I think there's issues with the foundation as well, so as they started kind of ripping it up, how it was originally laid, that's what's causing a lot of the extra expense.
so that project's underway?
What?
It's underway?
They started taking it out, I believe.
To assess what it looked like.
Got
So
it.
now it's like, basically they're looking at concrete floors. Right?
So that was the only other one I wanted to understand better. Personally, I don't wanna do deficit spending. I understand the need, if there's extra things here we can pull out of other places, like the perpetual care fund at the cemetery, you know, the diving board with the insurance.
Well, I guess I'd just like to make a motion to accept the proposed, list on the memo of $673,500 to take that out of the general fund, so we have a balanced fund. So I would just like to put that motion out there so we have something to agree upon or something to kill.
And
I'll
and do you-
second.
Do you want to include the sinking fund directive?
I would,
On
I
the
would,
fire?
I would include the sinking fund on the fire and any other discretionary funds other than the general fund
Okay.
be used on those things on the list. So if it's library foundation, if it's Seward Public Schools,
The
if it's
perpetual care,
perpetual care donations, whatever, any other funding mechanism, but I
Just
think,
not the, just not
just
the
not,
general fund?
just not the general fund.
Okay, well, no,
That's my motion.
and I will second your motion.
Motion and second, is there any further discussion? And I agree, I think that's a good, at least good starting spot, so.
I had a
Yes, Rich.
question, and this goes back to the discussion we had last time, and that is, when you're considering purchasing very expensive equipment, such as a rescue unit or a lift truck for a lifter, and the indebtedness extends out beyond the budget, the current budget, 23-24, it's okay for the council to look at those expenses, knowing that they may not come out of the 23-24 budget specifically, is that correct? Am I understanding
Yes,
that correctly?
Kelly approved that because we had,
That's what I thought. I thought we had discussed that, and so,
You lost me there, I'm not tracking.
essentially, he's reconfirming that this council can bind a future council to pay for something that will never hit the books for 2 or 3 years in the case of like a lift truck for the electric
Right.
department.
Yeah.
Those things are 3 years out at a
Yeah.
minimum at the moment.
Okay.
The reason you, I will tell you, the reason we authorize it now and not magically say yes, buy it now, but we won't recognize it on the books, is because I will tell you, for instance, on a truck or a dump truck, there are many times where all of a sudden something magical happens, where somebody's like, oh, that didn't meet my spec, I'm not taking that, and then all of a sudden, one, you have a dump truck that meets all your specs, and somebody's gotta get rid of it.
A demo.
Or demo or something else, and they call you up and go, I will give you a deal on this, it meets all your specs, I have one now, when you take it, you got 30 days. If it's in my budget, I can do it. If it's not, and we did something magical where we said, no, actually, it's gonna hit the books 3 years out, we don't have the budget authorization now to do it. Unfortunately, we will carry that. And that's why you'll see shortages, cause we'll carry it for 1 or 2 or 3 years to ensure we always have the budget to take that on
Okay.
and put it in.
And also having as a placeholder for transparency's sake, it's clear what our intentions are.
Right.
It's not like it's on a hidden spreadsheet somewhere that's gonna magically appear in the future. You know, this is a way to telegraph to the public and everyone, this is our intent down the road. Obviously, if something comes up sooner, we'll try to take advantage of it, but, that way there's no surprises later when all of a sudden a dump truck shows up.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
And usually when we're in that position, if it's something that we wouldn't, again, that's why we come to the council specifically for those big ticket items and say, we want specific authorization for this. Because we want to make sure there's a very specific binding requirement that we know what was going on, rather than, well, it was in the budget somewhere. Those ones that we think may jump a lot of years. Sometimes they're hard to plan.
Yeah.
Again, we thought that truck with the chassis issue,
Oh,
we
that's
thought that was
terrible.
gonna be 1 year out and we're good, and
Still not.
it's a hot mess.
Yeah.
You know, it sat for a year waiting for a chassis, and then COVID hit, and then they said, yeah, we're not building that chassis anymore. So
We
would
had
you like to
change
respec?
chassis. Yeah, to change chassis.
Yep. And that's the nature of the beast with it. Luckily, I think they're gonna recognize the cost, cause I mean, who knows what that would cost if we restarted.
Yeah.
And so, that is some of the concern, and it just really it's gotten exponentially worse post-COVID with the lead time on a lot of these big ticket items.
Any other questions or comments from the council? And so just repeat, the motion is to remove the capital items that were identified in the memo and to pursue other funding sources other than the general fund, if possible, for those items. Agreed? Agreed, 1 second. Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Kaler, Tanya, Skolterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Morgan, 7-0.
Is there anything else you want to discuss? Or comment? Regarding
Well-
the budget?
Thank you for coming up with that list. That's
Yeah.
a tough list, that's hard to do
That's-
with
yeah.
your department heads and everything involved, so
The other
we
thing,
appreciate it.
the other thing I would just, I don't want any of these teams that represent these, you know, facilities and stuff to, I mean, think that we don't care about those things, we do. I think we have to be responsible with the budget where we are right now, but if there's a way we can support them in trying to find funding for this, you know, I think everyone around the table would be happy to do so and do what we can to help find solutions.
A big part of, you know, what we do here is, as far as policy making is concerned, is setting priorities. And so, you know, we would encourage you as well throughout the year, not just at budget time, but identify the items that you feel are important. And then when we have this type of discussion, you can, you know, just like we do with the 1 and 6 year plan, identify where the priorities are, because over time, it may change. What's seems to be important, this year may not be as important, next year. And so, that's just a part of the policy making process. And so, yeah, those items aren't gonna go away. We'll pursue other funding sources if possible, but they'll likely be on the list, and that list may include other items next year, when we do this process again. So it's a fluid process, but if you think of items that you recognize, whether it's on the boards that you are liaisons to, or just in the public talking to constituents, things that you hear, let us know, and we can keep a running list of those to kind of encourage that discussion when the time comes. So is there anything else you'd like to propose regarding the budget? Do we need any other motions on the budget itself as amended, or are we good with those changes?
We're good for now because we are not adopting anything
Correct.
tonight. Our formal notice budget hearing will be next Tuesday. And so that was advertised, and then we'll get the budget in by, the end of the month.
We wanted to make sure that we had the public meeting tomorrow night before we brought it to the council, just in case something comes out of that discussion that we want to bring to your attention before you consider it next time.
Because unfortunately, a mass majority, I think, a good majority of public taxing entities are approving their budget and then having the hearing later and going, well, we already approved it, so thanks for stopping by.
We didn't feel like that was a good way to handle it from a policy standpoint, so we want to hear from everyone first and then allow the council the opportunity to make any changes and ultimately vote. So, that's where we are in the process. So with that, unless there's anything else, we can move on, I believe, to number 8. Are we good? Okay. All right. Item 8, authorization to designate finance director, treasurer Sydney Golden as signatory of city accounts.
Yeah, we have new finance director treasurer Sydney Golden with us, kind of sitting in for these budget discussions and finishing this out for the month before we throw her right into audit. But we do need to have her on as a signatory on our accounts, and so this just is kind of a formality to make sure that we have authorization to allow her to do that. And so we'll go through and make sure she has all the signature cards filled out for the plethora of accounts that all are. It's kind of the two main banks, but there's a lot of cards to sign. It's fine. So.
I'd move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Kaler, Tanya, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Strice, and Morgan, 7-0.
All right, thank you, and congratulations. I've done the card thing. You get this after a while, but it'll be fine. Item 9, consideration of a resolution to designate a crosswalk on North Columbia Avenue, 282 feet north of the curb, who wrote this?
This is how you have to do
North
this.
of the north curb line of Lincoln Street, running west to east. You all know where that is, right?
Yep,
Just in case you don't.
I know exactly where it is, I walk it all the
Picture.
time.
Technically, Sarah Van Cura wrote this because she's really good at this stuff. But we received a request, and we also noticed, pursuant to adding in the residency at the second apartment there on Lincoln and Columbia. This crosswalk was always there. It was there before, but it was installed the asphalt overlay of Columbia that went there by Concordia. This crosswalk is extremely popular. It is the go-to spot for those apartments, and then across, no signage, no striping, nothing. And so, traffic committee met on numerous items, including this one this week, and made the recommendation that we would like to see a striped crosswalk here. We'll put the signs that point down and say it's there, just like up by St. John's, and kind of delineate this a little bit better.
That makes sense.
So we feel like it's appropriate with the amount of pedestrian traffic we're seeing now.
You need a resolution?
Yeah,
I'll-
it may discussion, otherwise be a resolution, introduce the resolution.
I will introduce the resolution.
All right. The resolution has been introduced and is designated as resolution number 2023-13. Would anyone like to move that this resolution be passed and adopted?
Also move.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Kaler, Tanya, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Strice, and Morgan, 7-0.
All right, thank you. Item 10 is consideration of an ordinance for voluntary requests for annexation, Waking Company Edition, dedicated right-of-way north of Waverly Road from 266 to 280th Road. This is the final reading. An ordinance declaring the annexation of certain contiguous and adjacent tracts of land, urban and suburban in character. More specifically, the dedicated right-of-way north of Waverly Road from 266th Road to 280th Road in Wake and Company Addition to the city of Seward, to the corporate limits of the city of Seward, Nebraska, and extending the limits thereof accordingly, to describe the real estate to be annexed and its boundaries, to provide for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form, to provide for a time when this ordinance shall take effect. So we've done the 3 readings. There's no reason to suspend the statutory rule. So I'll ask, this is ordinance number 2023-18. Would anyone like to move that this ordinance be passed and adopted as read? We have a
Second.
motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none. Again, the question is, shall ordinance number 2023-18 be finally passed and adopted? Please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Kaler, Tanya, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Morgan, 7-0.
This is the last ordinance for this evening, so I need one final motion to make all the ordinances a part of the permanent record.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Kaler, Tanya, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Morgan, 7-0.
All right, item 11, this is an update on the Wellness Center. Correct.
I'm gonna defer to Joel.
Good evening, everyone. Just a couple updates. Recently, that we've received some positive feedback from our contractor with Sampson on the bidding process, that this is the most heavily bid on project that they've had in a couple years. And as they said, people want to work. People need some work. So hopefully that turns out to be a very good thing. End of last week, he did give us an estimated cash flow chart, which helps us process out in the financing and bonding that was mentioned, of just knowing when and how big all the bills will be at different times throughout the whole project. So that was a big step in being able to plan out financially for the whole project. And then also, some of the bids are in, and we've seen some of them, but not a complete list for us to feel comfortable going forward with sharing. But we have seen some of the bids, and there is a meeting scheduled with the contractor tomorrow where that will be discussed further. And hopefully, we'll be getting some more information soon after that meeting that will help move this on down. But end of last week was some positive information after not hearing much on the bidding process for a while, other than it being positive. So,
The other thing is we did meet with local financing.
yes.
That's our second option in regards to traditional bonding, and they put together a package between the local banks to do a short, essentially it's a smaller amount of bonding, and knowing the cash flows, knowing where we are in regards to grants and donations, and the fundraising that Seward Changing the Game has done. We can see that cash flow now, and we think that that is a viable option. So they'll finalize the terms of that, and they'll be able to compare it 1-to-1 with the final municipal bond option, and then bring both of them forward to you and say, here's what they look like. We think this option is the better deal long-term for the users and taxpayers, and make a recommendation to you. But we commend the local institutions working together to come up with that, and their bond council, and so we're pretty excited for that. And then also working with Kelly, working with legal counsel for Seward Changing the Game, also finalizing and getting agreements in place for that relationship, knowing what route we were gonna go with financing. So we know how the cash flow goes. Our hope is that really they pay their portion, we pay our portion, there's not like an interaction amongst our money. So, a lot of attorneys in that room, it was fun times, so.
But positive from the contractor.
Yep.
And that, I think this will be very good for us, the timing of it with construction companies.
The other thing is Joel's spending a ton of his time with finalizing equipment, office equipment, quotes, making sure all those meet up with where the estimates were that were coming in on or below, making sure all that goes on, and then programming as well. The biggest one for us is childcare, making sure that we begin the process of understanding licensing, working with some childcare providers in town to help be avenues for that, to see what that will look like. And so obviously we're still looking at June of 25, so we got a lot of time, but we want to get these things wrapped up so we know what's ahead for us.
Because I keep getting asked, is there a groundbreaking that occurs at some point?
Our hope is, but we don't want to find out the bottom number is not where people expect. We want that final GMP is what it's called.
Okay,
And when
that's
that
fine,
is-
I just.
There is a plan.
When we see that number, because that is the essential element, once that is fully declared by the
Seems to
contractor.
be the favorite question in the
It
conversation.
might be a snow shovel.
That's fine, it's
That
totally
was a
fine.
joke. That was a joke.
Yes, thanks, Matt.
I'm sorry about that.
I'm fine, like, I
I'm
just,
sorry, Emily.
No.
I know it was a joke.
people ask, so I just like to, know what to say.
these next finalized numbers from Sampson and the contractor should give us a timeline of what to expect from that, and then we can go forward. So
You
once
get
we
your gold,
receive that,
you get your gold snow shovel.
I mean,
I think they have, I think they have.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
shows up in white snow.
Right. Well, thanks, Joel. Is there any questions or comments from the council? Seeing none, then thank you, appreciate it. We can move on to the next item. This is the city administrator's report.
You name it, I got it in there. I bolded and underlined and worked extensively on city budget.
we see that, well done
So
you.
that's eats up most of my time. Doing things, working with Sydney on just kind of onboarding her, also noting that we have a part-time payroll person in right now, and trying to utilize Emily's time to train Sydney, but at the same time be effective in getting our payroll out so people get paid. And then just a litany of small items that have come in. I can go over any of those other ones. Number of TIF projects between Jonathan's, our apartment complex you'll see coming next month. Prepping some of that stuff, working it through LB 840, and some of the applicants we've gotten there. Working with Joel on the wellness centers, taking up quite a bit of time as we close out and get ready for the final GMP. And then also the Civic Center, as soon as the budget's cleared, we'll start the formal process and agreements to get that thing rolling for final design. I mean, we obviously know what the path is, and you've kind of generally approved that, but once the budget year hits, it is wild and crazy to get plans and specs out so that they can start renovating the Civic Center. Aaron has started working on rules and regs to finalize some of the users and uses within the Civic Center, and then also getting notice out now that they may have to be not in basically the whole eastern portion of the building for half a year.
Clark's already worried about the 4th of July. He'll be fine,
We'll be alright.
he'll be fine. He already has plans.
We can open the library back up. Becky didn't hear that. But, no, we'll work around, we're trying to get as much notice as possible to users of when we realistically expect. And we'll try to keep them in there as long as we can. We know there's always delays, obviously, in building projects. But we'll try to keep them in there as long as we can, but give them as much advance notice if they can find alternative sites. I think, like Kiwanis has already started figuring out where they're gonna go and other things, so. But that will be a big item and big renovation. And then also working with Brandon Cole and Mike on the wastewater plant. We're really still looking for funding. That is just such a big project that continuing to leverage that to utilize other funds is still a major priority, so we're not saddling it with the ratepayers forever, if we can find some funds for that. But wastewater is a hard one to find. I can get money all day for water, not for wastewater. So that's what's taking it up. There's probably a litany of other stuff on there, but I can answer any questions you have about the report.
Any questions or comments for Greg? Yes, Rich? Well, you looked like he was gonna say something. If this were an auction, you would have bought something.
I'm gonna accept the report, so I'm not gonna- thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to accept the report.
Is there a second though?
Second.
Oh, good. Thank God. Motion and a second. Please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Taylor, Tanya, Skoltman, Miller, Singleton, Stricey, Worthing, 7-0.
Alright, thank you. Do you have any future requests for council agenda items or administrative action? Seeing none. Up, is Jonathan? Yeah, you're hiding back there.
I'm here.
Upcoming events, what's going on in Seward?
Okay, with Brian and Memorial Healthcare System Urgent Care Seward and Alps Park Ribbon Cuttings on, that'll be Thursday of this week at 4:30. We have the Concordia University's Borland Music and Theater Center dedication ribbon cutting on September 23rd, 11:45. Sunday, September 24th, 4 to 6 is our upcoming farm to table culinary experience event at the dairy at Seward. Local shows, we have 17 total vendors. It should be delicious. We'd love for you to join us. Local music, local drinks, and tickets are on sale now. And we're hosting our Creative District Open House on Thursday, the 28th. So I think everybody's familiar with what that is, but we really would like public input on that process. We have a survey open right now Would ask you to pass that on to your constituents. We really want as much feedback as possible to prioritize projects, because there's grant funds that are available for us to pursue. But the Nebraska Arts Council wants us to see that we have strong community participation to prioritize what those arts projects should be. So the open house is Thursday, September 28th at 7 o'clock at the Seward Civic Center East Basement. And then Friday, September 29th is the ribbon cutting at 9 a.m. for Tractor Supply Store. With that, that's all I have. Thanks,
Great.
Mayor.
Thank you, Jonathan. Next we have a strategy session.
I move that the city council go into closed session with the mayor, city administrator, attorney, and clerk, along with Jonathan Jank, for the protection of the public interest and to discuss real estate interests at the Seward Rail campus. Also to provide city attorney with negotiating guidance for a period not to exceed 30 minutes.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
A motion and a second, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Taylor, Tanya, Skolterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Morgan, 7-0.
Alright, the council has voted to go into closed session at 8:24 p.m. for the protection of the public interest and to discuss real estate interests at the Seward Rail campus and to provide the city attorney with negotiating guidance. No formal action will be taken. We are in closed session.